Yo, what's up, guys, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and answer them here on this show. Special edition of this coming on a Monday because on Friday I had to post a different video to kind of get through the weekend. I thought it'd be a more interesting choice given what the news cycle was going on. But now I'm here and ready to answer your questions. And the first one is going to come from Preston Sport Podcast, who says, I'm predicting a big year for Denzel and JJ3. Do you see Troy Hill being more than just a role player on the defense? I think Troy Hill is going to be one of those interesting players if this works out for the defense, right? If the defense is good this year, then I think we're going to look at somebody like Troy Hill as one of those guys that the film breakdown people like a lot, that the kind of underground hardcore fans really love because he's somebody who can really enable a lot of different things. I don't know how flashy he will be, and he does have the ability to be a real flashy player, right? He's gotten pick sixes in the past. He's really a good coverage corner in that way. So I'm not saying he won't do those things, but I think that's really the dirty work aspect is really where he's going to earn his respect from the fan base. But thank you for the question. The next one comes from Jonathan Hooker, who says, in your opinion, what is the ceiling and floor for Baker Mayfield long term? Maybe it's the fan in me, but I could see Baker being much more than the top 10 quarterback long term. A good pairing of coach, QB, and front office usually lead to lasting success in the NFL. Absolutely, that is true. That is the triangle of success in the NFL. If you have those three things, you can do a lot in the NFL. Now, as far as Baker Mayfield goes, right now, I kind of see him as, somebody who's on a similar level to like what Matt Ryan was his entire career or what Matt Stafford was for most of his career. Somebody who can be a top five, could be an MVP candidate given the right scenario, but somebody who's going to be more consistent. And again, if you get them with the right head coach and the right GM, you'll have a very successful team, right? The few years they did that in Detroit, the Detroit Lions were consistently 10-win teams. When the Atlanta Falcons had Kyle Shanahan, had some consistency there, even though they weren't a completely great situation, they almost won the Super Bowl. So this is no slight to Baker. I don't see him as an Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees or one of those like perennial top five guys yet. I just haven't seen him have that kind of a season yet, so I'm not going to jump there. But I do think Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan, and that can look really good when you have a good GM and a good coach surrounding that. That could lead to a lot of success. A Big Ben, somebody also who's kind of consistently been on that level of players. So I think he's going to be in that range, right? Not the premium guys in the NFL or the most flashy guys in the NFL, but the guys just below that who are always on winning teams when they're in the right situation. So that's what I would go with. The next one is from Mark Myers, who says, what kind of season do you think Baker would have to win the MVP? Plus, do you think the Browns record's going to be? Well, I'm not going to predict the Browns record yet, but I will tell you, for Baker to win the MVP, he would probably have to have a massive, massive, massive year when it comes to these numbers, because you have to overcome Lamar Jackson to win the MVP. You have to overcome Patrick Mahomes to win the MVP. And that's difficult, right? Especially Patrick Mahomes, who could put up Space Jam numbers. So when that is the case, and look, Patrick's only won one MVP, so it's not like MVP fatigue's going to be coming in this year. So, for Baker to win the MVP this year, it would probably have to be something on a historic pace or a historic level with historic efficiency. So it'd be very difficult for him to win the MVP. So that's probably where that would be, just because it's a difficult time to win MVP. The next question comes from Liberty, who says, heading into the season, what AFC teams are good matchups for the Browns, and who will be the toughest matchup personnel and schematically? It's always going to be the Baltimore Ravens. I think that's the team that worries you the most. You could throw in the Chiefs there because obviously they give you problems, but I do feel like the defense of the Chiefs is something that the Browns with Odell are more equipped to handle than the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens throw so many different problems at you offensively, and then you have to remember defensively, that's the strength of their team. They just also happen to have Lamar Jackson on the other side of the ball. And I know a lot of people tend to oversimplify how it is to beat the Ravens. But the reality is, and this is just a hard reality, I know a lot of Browns fans aren't going to want to hear this, the Ravens have not lost very many games with Lamar Jackson. So it is not very easy to figure out the Ravens. Nobody has done it in 3 years. At this point, they're just a very difficult team to scheme for. They're a very difficult team to beat, and they're a very, very good team, and they know what they're doing. So it's going to be the Ravens. I think that's going to be the toughest matchup for the Cleveland Browns. I think that's what Andrew Berry spent a lot of the offseason trying to figure out how he's going to get past this team, because let's not forget, Baltimore Ravens swept the Cleveland Browns last year. So that is something that they have to remedy in some way, because you're just not going to win the division if you can't beat the Ravens. Next question comes from Griffin, who says, what do you think is going to happen to Andy Janovich? I've heard different solutions, like drop a tight end, drop a running back, or cut Janovich. What do you think is the most likely scenario, one of these or the other? Man, they didn't use Janovich that much last year, did they? But they keep 2 fullbacks on the roster, so I guess they have plans. I don't know. I think eventually it's going to be Harrison Bryant as the fullback, and that's just what the situation is going to be. If for the Cleveland Browns last year, the way they played, and even if you look at like the Tennessee Titans, for those teams not to heavily feature fullbacks, it's just a bad sign for the fullback position. I don't know if it's coming back or if it's ever going to be prominent in the NFL, or if it's ever going to be somewhere that's going to justify a roster spot again in the NFL. It just looks like it's getting phased out. And a lot of teams just don't use them. And part of the reason why teams don't use fullbacks anymore is because offensive linemen and tight ends have gotten just so much more athletic. So if you need to pull somebody, you can just pull somebody off the line of scrimmage instead of sacrificing, a skill player or a wide receiver, somebody who could be a better receiver of the football, to do essentially what the offensive lineman can do now when it comes to lead blocking. So that's part of the reason why even in run-heavy schemes, you just don't see a ton of fullback play. And with the Browns having somebody as athletic at each guard position as Joe Bitonio and Wyatt Teller, I just don't see a lot of use for the fullback in this team. So, he's probably on the bubble. The next question comes from Philip, who says, Quincy, despite the great season Kevin Stefanski had when it came to play calling, should the Browns consider giving play calling responsibilities to AVP? The Browns had a lot of issues maintaining leads in the third and fourth quarter, and play calling from AVP in the Pittsburgh playoff game was quite good. Yeah, but the Steelers almost came back. You know what I mean? So if that's the issue, blowing these leads, or at least not being able to maintain the margins, then that wouldn't change anything. The same thing that happened against the Titans is what happened against the Steelers. So no, I wouldn't. That really isn't on the offensive play callers. I don't think the scores got close because the offense got passive. I think the scores got close because the defense was just not good last year. I think that's really the core of the issue. I mean, when your offense is putting up 40-plus points, anything close is on the defense at that point, right? The next question comes from Driveway Reflections, who says, how big of a leap do you think Jedrick Wills will take and make in year 2? Will he be a Pro Bowler? I assume he's going to make a leap. Look, he was pretty good as a pass protector. I just want him to show a little bit of improvement as a run blocker. He's very athletic. He's somebody you can pull. I just want to see him be more consistent in that aspect. But other than that, I think he's going to be a fine player in the NFL. The next question and the last question comes from Preston, who says, how do you expect Odell to come back from the injury? I'm excited, but I'm hesitant because this is the 3rd year in a row where he's been setting up a comeback year. Love the videos. Keep up the good work. Yeah, technically it's the 3rd year in a row, right? When he came to Cleveland, it was kind of a comeback year. And then he played a full season in 2019. He just had surgery in the offseason, so it was technically kind of a comeback, but it really wasn't. It's not like he missed any game time. So technically, yeah, but it's not like he's been coming off of back-to-back season-ending injuries. He didn't have that in 2019. Now, 2020 coming off this ACL. Look, the main thing that I'm interested in when it comes to Odell and the Cleveland Browns this year is what is the difference that competency and redundancy and repetition, what difference will those 3 things make for Odell Beckham? in this offense and how successful they'll be. That's the big difference maker for this team. That'd be the big difference maker for Odell Beckham. So I'm not worried about the ACL, but I'm more intrigued about what is that added chemistry with Baker Mayfield. What's that going to add to this? What is that added chemistry with the coaching staff and the offense? What's that going to add to this dynamic? And are they going to be able to finally get this thing right? That's the big question. But again, guys, thank you so much for asking these questions. Have a great day. Have a good night.